Look at the face of this king. The gold has been torn away beneath the eyes, peeled back from the skull it was meant to protect forever. The name that once ran across the coffin in carved royal cartouches has been chiseled out of every surface, hammered into nothing. In ancient Egypt, this was not vandalism. This was murder after death. To destroy a pharaoh's name and a pharaoh's face was to destroy the man himself in the afterlife, to deny him eternity, to kill him a second time. And whoever did this wanted to be certain. They did not miss a single cartouche. This coffin was found a stone's throw from Tutankhamun, in the same cluster of tombs, in the most famous valley on Earth. We know almost everything about the boy king next door. His golden mask, his treasures, his face preserved for 3,000 years. And we cannot tell you, with certainty, the name of the man whose face someone tore apart a few steps away. But the stranger tomb is the one beside it. Because when archaeologists opened that second tomb in 2006, the first new tomb found in the Valley of the Kings since Tutankhamun himself, 84 years of waiting, they found 7 coffins and no body at all. 2 tombs, a few meters apart, beside the most famous king in the world. One with no one inside it. One whose owner someone tried to erase. And to this day, we cannot tell you who lay in either. We begin with the empty coffin, because the empty coffin is the key to the destroyed face. For 84 years, the Valley of the Kings was considered finished. After Howard Carter pulled Tutankhamun out of the sand in 1922, the consensus among Egyptologists was that the valley had given up everything it had, every shaft mapped, every chamber catalogued. There was nothing left to find. Then, in early 2006, a team led by Otto Schaden of the University of Memphis was working a few meters from Tutankhamun's tomb. They were not even looking for a tomb. They were clearing the foundations of ancient workmen's huts, simple stone shelters built by the laborers of the 19th dynasty, the men who had dug other royal graves centuries later. Schaden's project was focused on a different tomb entirely, the tomb of the pharaoh Amenmesse, catalogued as Tomb 10. And then the ground changed. Instead of bedrock, the diggers hit a layer of white limestone chips, the telltale debris left behind when ancient masons cut a shaft into the rock. They followed it down. What they found was a vertical shaft dropping roughly 16 to 20 feet, ending in a single undecorated chamber, about 13 by 16 feet. No paintings on the walls, no inscriptions, nothing to announce who had built it or why. Inside that bare room sat 7 wooden coffins and around 28 large storage jars. The find was announced to the world in February 2006, and it carried a weight that is hard to overstate. This was the first tomb opened in the Valley of the Kings since Carter. 84 years. An entire scholarly lifetime had passed with the assumption that the valley was empty. And now, here was a sealed chamber that nobody had touched since the age of the pharaohs. The coffins themselves looked promising. Painted faces, the kind that usually cover a wrapped human body. The team opened them one by one, on camera, with the world watching. And one by one, they were disappointed. The coffins held no mummies. They held pillows, pottery, natron salt, fragments of cloth and clay. This was not a burial. It was something else. The climax came on the 28th of June 2006, when the last sealed coffin was opened in front of the cameras. Everyone expected a body. There was no king inside, no queen, no body of any kind. What KV-63 turned out to be was an embalming cache, the leftover material from a royal mummification. The natron, the linen, the broken pottery, the resin-stained debris, all of it the residue of preparing a body for eternity, sealed away and abandoned. And here is the detail that stays with you. Salima Ikram, the mummification specialist at the American University in Cairo, examined the natron salt packed into the chamber. Natron is the desiccant the Egyptians used to dry out a corpse, the chemical heart of the entire embalming process. And Ikram found that this natron had already been used. Clinging to it, she said, were bits of desiccated human flesh. Over 385 pounds of salt sat in that chamber, some loose in the coffins, some packed into small bags, and on some of it were the dried remnants of a human being who had been mummified somewhere nearby. There was more. Beneath 5 linen pillows, the team found a small gilded coffin, only about 17 inches long, the size made for an infant. The pillows alone were extraordinary, because soft textiles almost never survive 3,000 years, and here were 5 of them stacked in near-perfect condition. There was also a lion-headed embalming bed, dismantled and scattered in pieces among the jars, the kind of bed used to support a body during the opening of the mouth ceremony, the ritual meant to restore the senses of the dead for the afterlife. So an embalming cache means a royal burial happened close by. Someone of high rank was mummified, and the messy leftovers of that process were sealed into this chamber a few steps away. The question that has driven this mystery for nearly 20 years is simple. Whose body was it? And the answer keeps pointing a few steps further, toward the tomb where a king's face was destroyed. 4 names come up when Egyptologists try to fill that empty coffin, and it is worth being honest that not one of them is proven. The strongest candidate is Tutankhamun himself, not his body, but the cache from his burial. The evidence for this is physical and specific. The entrance to KV-63 was sealed under the same flood layer of debris that covered the entrance to Tutankhamun's tomb, which means both were closed off at roughly the same moment in antiquity. The storage jars closely resemble those found in a pit catalogued as Tomb 54, discovered back in 1907, which is widely believed to be the embalming cache for Tutankhamun's funeral. And there was a single inscribed clue, a seal impression reading Paten, part of the name of Tutankhamun's wife, Akhenaten. In 2008, the Egyptologists Aidan Dodson and Salima Ikram concluded in print that KV-63 was most likely the main embalmer's cache for Tutankhamun's burial. Likely, not certain. But other names are in the running. Queen Kia, a secondary wife of the pharaoh Akhenaten and a possible mother of Tutankhamun, Akhenaten herself, or a connection to the body lying in the tomb next door, the one we are coming to. And this is where the institutional contradiction shows up. The kind of thing this channel exists to point out. In June 2006, Zahi Hawass, then the most powerful man in Egyptian archaeology, publicly declared that KV-63 was the tomb of Queen Kia. It made headlines. It was clean, it was quotable, and it named a famous royal woman. The trouble is that the researchers actually working the evidence did not agree. Dodson and Ikram called the Kia claim, in print, groundless speculation. Otto Schaden, the man who actually found the tomb, stayed cautious and refused to name an owner he could not prove. The headline said one thing. The data said something far less certain. If you have watched our video on the sealed chamber behind Tutankhamun's wall, you have seen this same valley produce this same pattern before, a confident public claim laid over a mystery nobody had actually solved. Now, before we go further, if you find these forgotten corners of the Valley of the Kings as strange as we do, this is the kind of mystery we dig into here every few days, so consider subscribing and following along. Because the cache pointed toward a royal burial nearby that nobody could name. And then there was the tomb, where someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure a king could never be named at all. The tomb we have been circling back to is catalogued as Tomb 55, and it was found almost a century before K563 in January 1907. The excavator was Edward Ayrton, working for the wealthy American collector Theodore Davis. When Davis published the find, he announced it as the tomb of Queen Tiye, the powerful matriarch of the late 18th dynasty. There was a problem with that. The body inside was male. Inside that single chamber sat one gilded wooden coffin, and it had been deliberately mutilated. The golden face that should have covered the head of the dead king had been torn away beneath the eyes, ripped from the wood. The royal cartouches, the oval frames that held the king's name, had been chiseled out of every surface they appeared on. Someone had stood in that chamber and methodically removed every trace of who this man was. To understand why that matters, you have to understand what the ancient Egyptians believed. A person's name and a person's face were not decoration. They were the anchors of the soul in the afterlife. Speak a dead man's name, and you kept him alive forever. Erase it, destroy his face, and you erased him from eternity itself. This was the second death, the only true death an Egyptian feared, the annihilation of the person from existence. Whoever entered Tomb 55 did not loot it for gold. The gold mask was torn, but left in the chamber. They came to commit the second death. So who was he? This is the part where the academics have been arguing for over a century, and we are going to keep it short, because the argument matters less than the fact that it cannot be settled. The two leading candidates are Akhenaten, the heretic pharaoh who tried to erase Egypt's old gods, and his shadowy successor, Smenkhkare. In 2010, a team led by Zahi Hawass published a DNA and CT study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, concluding that the man in Tomb 55 was most probably Akhenaten, the father of Tutankhamun, and that he had died between the ages of 35 and 45. The case looked closed. It was not. Critics went straight for the age. The Czech anthropologist Eugen Struhal examined the same bones and concluded the man was no older than around 22, far too young to be Akhenaten, who reigned for 17 years. In 2022, the astrophysicist and archaeologist Juan Antonio Belmonte argued the body fit Smenkhkare better than Akhenaten. The bones, the teeth, the dating, all of it still disputed. So we will tell you the honest truth. We do not know who this king was. We only know that someone wanted to be certain that nobody ever would. Two tombs, a few steps apart, in the shadow of Tutankhamun. One with no body in it at all. One with a body whose owner was deliberately erased. What connects them? The connection is a single, violent chapter of Egyptian history, and once you see it, both tombs stop being separate mysteries and become two scars from the same wound. K563, Tutankhamun's tomb, and Tomb 55 all belong to the same brief, turbulent stretch of time, the Amarna period, and its bitter undoing. Akhenaten had torn Egypt apart from the top down, abandoning the old gods, building a new capital in the desert, ordering the name of the god Amun chiseled off monuments across the kingdom. When he died, his revolution collapsed. His city was abandoned. His son Tutankhamun restored the old gods and moved the court back to Thebes. And then the men who came after went to work erasing the Amarna family, the way that family had once erased Amun. Their names were hammered off the monuments. Their bodies were moved, hidden, and in at least one case, mutilated. That is the world both of these tombs come from. A royal house that ended in disgrace, its dead shuffled in secret through the valley, some of them deliberately attacked even in death. The embalming cache with no matching grave. The defaced king with no certain name. Around them hover the unaccounted bodies of that same family. Kia, the princess Akhenaten, and above all, Nefertiti, Akhenaten's queen, whose tomb has never been found despite more than a century of searching. And the strange thing is that the science to settle this may already exist. There is human tissue clinging to the natron in Kf 63. There is a body in tomb 55 that has already been scanned and sampled once and could be tested again with better methods. No drilling into walls, no spectacle, just the slow and contested work of identification, carried out almost 20 years after Kf 63 was opened, with the tomb itself still not fully published in the scientific record. Otto Schaden died in 2015 before he could finish that work, and Salima Ikram took over as director. The answers may be sitting in a storeroom in Egypt right now, waiting for someone to ask the right question. Think about what these people wanted. The ancient Egyptians built everything to be remembered forever. The pyramids that still dominate the horizon. The names carved 1,000 times into stone so they could never be forgotten. The bodies preserved with 300 pounds of salt so they could carry their owners into eternity. Everything they made was a refusal to disappear. And here, a stone's throw from the most famous king who ever lived, are two tombs that defeated that wish completely. One holds no one at all, only the salt and the linen and the dried traces of a body that went somewhere else. The other holds a man whose own people tore his face from his coffin and chiseled his name into silence so that he would vanish from eternity the way he had tried to make others vanish. We can stand in front of both tombs today. We can read every measurement, name every scientist, weigh every piece of evidence. And we still cannot tell you the two things that matter most. We cannot tell you whose body was prepared in that empty chamber. And we cannot tell you the name of the king whose face was torn away beside it. Two graves, a few steps from Tutankhamun, and two people the most documented civilization in human history managed, in the end, to lose.